Hometown for Bruce Springsteen was, of course, in New Jersey, and he still spends a couple of months a year back there. Home proper is now in the hills overlooking Los Angeles, a place he says that offers sun, early nights, relative anonymity, and the chance to re-find himself. In 1987, his marriage to Julianne Phillips broke down. Bruce Springsteen had to deal with a sort of media attention he's never had to deal with before. Then, some years later, on June the 8th, 1991, Bruce Springsteen married Patti Scialfa in the garden of his new home. They now have two children, Evan and Jessica. Last year, Springsteen simultaneously released two albums, Human Touch, after 18 months' work, and Lucky Town, which was completed in a matter of weeks. He's presently on a European tour, and next Saturday becomes the first artist to play at the newly revamped and renamed National Bowl at Milton Keynes. Like many creative people in all forms of the arts, Springsteen has been able to communicate to millions through his music, but one-to-one personal relationships have been more difficult. He once said his success gave him the luxury of an extended adolescence, but the last few years have seen him having to face up to finding out more about the real person inside. Songs on Lucky Town, like If I Should Fall Behind and My Beautiful Reward, would seem to have been written by someone who's now at peace with themselves. We spoke recently in his dressing room just before he went on stage at Sheffield Arena. And I'd like to dedicate this Bruce Springsteen special to one of his greatest fans, Roger Scott. Bruce Springsteen, welcome to 1FM. It's great to see you.
Thanks.
Are you feeling good?
Yeah, feeling fine.
Yeah.
Had a bit of a bug, but it's okay.
I want to open it up with the opening track from the live album. I mean, this is like about having your tires rotated. Only a red-headed woman can rotate your tires, right? So I guess you'd know.
I wrote that as a joke. It was funny, you know, like I did a benefit with Bonnie Raitt and Jackson Browne. And Bonnie was really helpful to me when I started. You know, she was one of the few people who'd let me on the bill with her. And I used to do some gigs with her back in the early 70s, I guess. And she was always real sort of generous. And so, I don't know, I went down to do the sound check and she was there. And Patti was there too, and I started goofing around, you know. And I went home that night, and you know, it was written sort of as a joke for Bonnie and my wife, really.
Some might say it's not quite politically correct these days. Do you worry about that stuff?
I'm sure I do, but I didn't realize it wasn't.
Bruce Springsteen, Red-Headed Woman, the opening track from the new live album, Bruce Springsteen in Concert. I mean, we had the word unplugged on the front with the un crossed out.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's the way it was on the show. You opened up with an acoustic song, and you said, right, let's get the band in and plug in. Were you going to do a whole acoustic thing originally?
No.
No?
We had pretty short breaks on that tour, and I hadn't really sat down to contextualize this stuff in an acoustic framework, and I only had a couple of weeks off, and John always wanted to do it with the band from the beginning.
This is John Lando.
Yeah, because we'd never really been filmed with the band very much, particularly live. And everybody else had played, I guess, unplugged, and so he thought it'd be different. So it was his idea.
Well, rules are made to be broken, right?
You know, but it was. I was glad we did it. It was nice getting the band down on a film like that. I thought they did a good job. You know, guys that produced the thing.
There's a real good feel about a lot of your more recent songs now that, in a way, maybe you've gone through a bit of the midlife crisis, I guess. I mean, Better Days is a lovely feel. We're into better days now. And you can look behind you and say, well, maybe I had to go through that stuff, but I'm glad it's behind me now.
I don't know, you know, I think you're always going through something, you know. It varies to the degree of intensity, I suppose. I think I hit a spot where I was trying to do something that was just very hard for me. And it's probably for most musicians and writers and artists and filmmakers, people whose main job is done in their imagination, you know, inside their own head in some fashion. That I think that was a way of dealing with a certain element of loneliness, you know, that either was part of who you were or the circumstances or whatever. But it's funny, I think that if you lead a life where one of the most fundamental things you do is internal, you can get unaccustomed to people, you know, in and around you and making demands on you and being really close in a certain fashion, you know. But there's a lot of things, unless you learn how to live with that, there's a lot of things you can't have, you know. It's difficult to communicate with individuals, you know. It's easy to communicate, you know, at a concert or through a song or something, but that's only a percentage of life, you know. So I was kind of going through a period where I was trying to sort those things out, figuring out just how to learn how to do that in some fashion. I think that's the idea. You're supposed to move on through life and learn how to do things that are difficult for you, by confronting things that you have failed to or hadn't had the courage to confront previously. I think that's what gives life whatever meaning it has. And then making those connections, both personally and on some broader scale, is the other thing that gives it some sense of vitalness and sense of direction and meaning. So really the record was just about the struggle to do those particular things,
All right, we're going to play right now.
All right, let's rock it!
You're listening to BBC Radio 1FM. This is Johnny Walker, an exclusive to 1FM. Bruce Springsteen as well. That's Better Days from the new live album. This sounds a bit cliche and corny, but the day that your son Evan was born, did that change your life for you?
When you have kids, it's a big, I suppose it's when your life changes the most in some fashion, They're tangible investments in tomorrow, It's like up until then, I think the future can remain pretty abstract in some ways, And your own place in it can feel abstract. But once you have those little kids kind of running around pulling on your shirt, there it is. They're going to be here when you're gone, So what you do now feels like it matters more. It feels like the choices you make carry more weight because you want to, in some way, be the person that you hope your children will grow up to be and surpass in some fashion, Not necessarily as far as your job goes, but it just is sort of your personal life goes, So it changes the way you see yourself. I think it changes the way you see the world, and it fills you with a certain kind of passion and immediacy. I think that, first of all, you also recognize your own mortality, that your life has limits. It is limited. There's a limited amount of time to do what you want to do and be whoever you may want to be. There's other things besides kids that do that for you. Illnesses can do it for you. Anything that brings a fragile sense of existence and time into your present consciousness in some way that moves you to do something.
Do you find when you come home, another great thing about the kids is that you might have been having hassles in the studio or something, and you get home and you get into their world, and it enables you to forget. Suddenly you put your thing into perspective and you think, well, hey, yeah, there's another little world going on here that these guys are in.
Yeah, that's good. It always, you realize, it's that story of, music or rock and roll, whatever you want to call it. You had to simultaneously feel like it was the most important thing in the world and not very important at all, which is true, I think that the kids, they kind of remind you that they always pull you out into the world that is outside of your head, that's outside of that internal place where you write your songs. And probably for people like me who lived a lot previously, you can't live in there as much now. They want you to come out and be with them and live with them, and
that's maybe a good thing.
Yeah, it's a real good thing, It's a little scary. It can be scarier a lot, but I've gotten a lot out of it.
All right, listen, let's play. We'll do the song "Man's Job." Bruce Springsteen on 1FM. That's a man's job. Well, I guess you've said it all in the song, really, then, Bruce.
Probably not. Maybe I was trying. I don't know.
So how's the band gelling now? It was pretty new, you all playing together last year. This year now, with the 93 tour, is things sort of clicking in a better way?
Yeah. I think this stretch of the European tour is probably the best we've played, I think we're better than we were in the States, and we're better than we were when we came around first time, Seems a little looser. Show changes more from night to night. It's just less rigid. I'm not so much out with the idea of playing this particular group of songs or that particular group of songs. I kind of take it on a nightly basis.
One of the people on the show, Barbara, was saying that you write the set list about 2 minutes before you guys go on, so it's a bit tough for the band.
Not if they, once you know the stuff and you're used to that, it'll change somewhat, from night to night, and that's part of the job for flexibility. You got to be pretty flexible, and it keeps it a little more exciting. It's sort of like I like to go out feeling like I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work out. And you never are, and even if you think you are, it never works out the way you think, but it's just a part of trying to keep it living and moving. Some songs we play every night, and And a good portion of things we do, but we'll switch the order, and I'll put different things in and different things out, so it keeps moving pretty well.
On the MTV concert that you did for Human Touch, there's Paddy singing with you, and there's some great sparks going on between you two. Is Paddy gonna join you on stage at Milton Keynes?
If she's there, she does, you know. Usually if she comes out, she'll get up and sing. Generally, when she's here and everybody's together, we will always sing a song or two.
Was there a time when you needed that human touch, when you're pretty lonely?
Everybody feels that all the time. I think it's what everybody's looking for that always. It's hard to find. And, the world seems to be growing increasingly brutal, And I guess in some way that's what musicians or painters or artists I think that's why people come. I think that's why people go see music or movies or painting or read books, It's that search for recognition, It's a moment when you always get in touch with your own humanity in some fashion. I think that's what people find in your songs, They find themselves and something in common, In a world where it seems like it's harder and harder to find things in common. It seems more fragmented. So that's part of the job,
Yeah. Human touch. There's nothing like a good hug, huh? One of my favorite songs is If I Should Fall Behind. Can you tell us about how you came to write that? What started it off?
I was in a Chinese restaurant, and I don't know, it just came to me.
It's got such a feel about it, such a special song, and there you go, well, I wrote it in a Chinese restaurant.
It doesn't necessarily make any sense, It's, all I remember that was, I was sitting there, I think I was with Patty and some friends of ours, and I leaned over and said, If I Should Fall Behind. And I said, that's a song title. And I think I went home and I wrote it, I had some ideas for it, but I guess it's about relationships in general, It came pretty fast. I didn't really struggle over it or anything. It seemed to be kind of there waiting, one of those songs that are sitting there waiting to be written.
Is that the way that happens? Some songs just come dead easy and others you really have to struggle with?
Yeah, you'll go through periods where you just won't write, I think television is part of it. Recently I realized that the amount of time, if you spend a lot of time watching television, and I'll fall into it and fall out of it, that the amount of ideas per hour are meager, particularly in the States,
57 channels and nothing.
It's just more difficult. But you'll go through periods where you'll just have real sort of prolific stretches of time. I don't know exactly what that's about, sometimes I think it's if you expose yourself to more really creative things, whether it's films or books or other music or life itself in some fashion, by going out and pursuing some sort of experiences. I think maybe that does it, but then sometimes I'll go through periods that feel pretty dry for some reason. And I tend to think it's all psychological, and ultimately there's more songs in you than you can ever write, The word writer's block is true, because you're blocked, you're not... I think everybody out there, there's millions of songs inside you, And it's just a question of clearing the way for them to come out, And sometimes that may be easier to do than other times.
Does confidence sometimes come into it? Sometimes if you haven't written a song for a while, that even still, with all the successful songs you've got in your past, that maybe... confidence is not there. This song, I'm not sure whether that's good enough or whether that's quite right or something like that.
That always comes into it. I think everybody's a mishmash of confidence and insecurity and doubt. It's just, that stuff is always mixing around in there. I don't know if it has anything to do with when a song comes out. I think, if you haven't written for a while, no matter what you've written in the past, you can say, I don't have anything to say. Maybe that's true. I don't believe that's necessarily true. I believe you don't know how to get to what you have to say at a particular moment. It's impossible to be out in life at all, really, and not have anything to say about it. So it seems impossible. There's just too much you're confronted with the minute you step off the front porch of your house, You can feel overwhelmed by it and paralyzed in some fashion by that. So I think, like, for me, it's been a way of kind of sorting out how to, I always figure, well, gee, I made records not really regularly. That must have been what I wanted to do, or I didn't know how to do it another way, So I think at this point, like, I want to record more often, which means I'm going to have to write more often. It means I have to remain open and involved more. And I think you have to be frightened less.
Lucky Town was so quick, wasn't it? I mean, did you like that? The fact that you could do it so fast?
Yeah, I always like that. I hate doing it slow, It's like it costs a lot of dough and you suffer through it. It's like it's a drag, If you can do it fast, I was 2 or 3 weeks, and I've done several other records as quickly as that. And that's, if I had my preference, that's how they'd all go, But you can't always get there.
Bruce Springsteen is with us on 1FM. That's from the new album, Bruce Springsteen in Concert. You're on the road now doing a tour, and this is the whole focus of your day now, isn't it? I mean, do you really get real joy the moment you hit the stage? I mean, you always manage to make every single person in the audience feel like you're doing the show just for them.
I don't know, I suppose initially you're doing it for yourself in some fashion, for something that happens to you, when you're doing it. I think, of course you're doing it to communicate, and you're doing it to reach people, and fundamentally to speak to people, and to just say, hey, I'm alive, and so are you, and, you're looking for some sort of mutual recognition. That's the fundamental thing, I think, why people continue. I could stay home, I suppose, but you do feel driven to move, I guess looking into people's faces from the stage is an amazing thing, It's still something that is shockingly new on a nightly basis, You won't quite see the same thing twice, You see all kinds of different stories, It's fascinating. And also trying to summon something and trying to manifest some spirit, some feeling, some sense of fun, sense of being together. It's that moment when I think people feel like, hey, you're all out there on the road together in some fashion. Whether this is different or that's different about you, or this is different about you. That's when music is working, that's what it does. And I always believe that that's why people come. They come because they recognize something in you that they recognize in them. Whatever the circumstances of people's lives might be, that is the fundamental thing that creates an audience and creates an experience on any particular night. And just out there to give people some enjoyment and a sense of things, and sense of their own lives. And in doing so, you regain a sense of your own life,
I know it's a cycle between the artist and the audience, sort of energy and stuff. Do you ever get a night maybe where you're walking on stage at the beginning of the show and you think, I don't really think this is going to happen tonight. I don't really feel like I got enough to give. And suddenly that show might turn out to be one of the best ever. Do you get more coming from the audience?
You can't read it, You can never read it. I've gone on stage feeling great and come off feeling like a flat tire, It's not something you control in that sense, It's a real cooperative event. You can bring a lot, but you can't bring all of it, and maybe you can't even bring the most important thing in some fashion. There's got to be something happening in the air between you and the people that are there. And that is the fundamental thing more than the choice of songs or type of music you're doing. It's the most important and fundamental ingredient, and it's something that you can't, there's not a word for it, but you know it when you feel it. You know it when it's there. So I try to do all different kinds of things, It's like you want to reach people emotionally, and you want to entertain people, give them some laughs, and the whole thing.
Do you ever look sideways on stage, though, and think, geez, I wish I could bump into Clarence here? There's times that maybe I miss the guy.
Yeah, you always miss all your old friends, It's something where I had a long relationship with the guys in the band, where we all still talk and we're friendly. The main thing that I wanted to do was open up my creative circumstances to where I could do other things also, whether it was play with different musicians or make different types of records, where you don't have to be just one particular thing in one particular circumstance, I think that was a freedom that I've looked for at this point in my career and that I want to have. And, I'm in the process of pursuing it. But the guys have come out and played during the tour. Max came out and played, and Gary came out and played, and Danny came out and played. And I talked to Clarence quite a bit on the phone, see what he's up to. So, we're all hanging, we're all staying.
Bruce Springsteen searching for his beautiful reward. I reckon he's more than halfway there. And the interview you heard, exclusive to 1FM, Bruce Springsteen plays Milton Keynes National Stadium next Saturday. And all the music you heard is from the new album, Bruce Springsteen in Concert, MTV Plugged.